They didn't see a fighter when she walked in, only a shadow trying to stay unseen. But shadows too can strike when the light turns cruel. The morning air outside Clearwater High felt colder than usual, even though the sun was out. There was something in the silence of that moment, something tense, expectant, the kind of silence that only exists right before a storm. Amara Brooks stood just beyond the school gates, her worn black hoodie draped loosely over her braids, her hands tucked into her sleeves, gripping the frayed strap of her backpack like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. She had been here before, not Clearwater High, not this exact building with its towering glass windows and perfectly pruned hedges, but this moment, the arrival, new school, new rules, new hallway jungle to walk through, and the same unspoken truth trailing her like a ghost. She was black, she was quiet, and that was enough for most people to decide she didn't belong. Amara took a deep breath, the kind her mother taught her, slow in, slower out. Control the breath, control the body, control the body, control the body, control the mind. That was the way of the Brooks household, especially after Atlanta, especially after what happened. She stepped forward. Inside the halls, everything was pristine. The linoleum floors polished like mirrors, lockers color-coded in royal blue and white. Students walked with the relaxed confidence of kids who had never had to fight for a seat at the table. Amara kept her eyes down, but she could still feel it, the weight of curiosity clinging to her skin like humidity, the side glances, the double takes, the fake coughs followed by soft laughter. She knew the look. Who's she? Where's she from? Is she trouble? She walked like fog, present but untouchable. Amara reached her locker, pulling the slip of paper from her pocket. Combination 42169. Her fingers trembled just slightly, not from fear, but from the restraint of holding back the years of muscle memory. The urge to scan exits, track movement, be ready for confrontation. Not here, not again. She was halfway through spinning the lock when the hallway shifted. The air tilted, like a ripple in water. It wasn't just her instinct. The chatter dimmed, footsteps slowed, and then the crowd parted, like royalty was coming through. Amara didn't look up. She didn't need to. The sound of expensive boots, the sharp click of polished nails on phone screens, the scent of designer perfume. It all arrived before she did. Claire Hastings. If there was a throne at Clearwater High, Claire sat on it, blonde, sharp-jawed, and carved out of ice and ambition. Her Instagram bio read, "Born to lead," and no one had ever dared question it. Not the students, not the teachers, not even the principal. To Claire, order wasn't earned, it was inherited, and in her kingdom, new girls didn't walk in with silence like shields, especially not black ones, with guarded eyes and a spine too straight to bow. Claire's eyes landed on Amara, cold, calculating. There was no smile, just the hint of a smirk playing at the corner of her glossed lips. A smirk that said, "I see you. I already don't like you." Amara felt it like static in her veins. That look, she'd been here before too. She knew what it meant. "You're not one of us, and I will make sure you never forget it." But Amara didn't flinch. She clicked her lock open, tucked her hoodie back slightly, and placed her book inside. Slowly, calmly, she could feel Claire watching her, like a predator studying prey. It wasn't sure how to bite yet. This wasn't fear, it was memory of what happens when she does react. Because back in Atlanta, the last girl who pushed her too far left the school in an ambulance, and Amara left with a permanent record. That was the moment her mother sat her down, placed Amara's scraped knuckles into her hands, and whispered, "Power isn't in how hard you hit, it's in knowing when not to." So today Amara let the silence hang, Let Claire feel like she had won the first round. Let everyone watch. She wasn't weak, she was waiting. By the time she reached her first period class, the whispers had already started. She's from Atlanta. Did you see her shoes? She didn't even say hi to Claire. She's probably one of those quiet freaks. Amara took a seat in the farthest corner of the room. Her desk was near the window, sunlight pooling onto the chipped wood. She let it warm her face. Out of the corner of her eye, she could see Claire take the seat near the front. Not alone, of course. Surrounded by her perfect circle, Madison, Lily, and Lexi. They giggled like a synchronized performance. Amara opened her notebook and began to draw. Not doodles, patterns, movement diagrams, footwork drills. She couldn't practice out loud, but she could still stay sharp. She didn't want to fight, but if it came to her, she'd already decided. This time she wouldn't run, but she also wouldn't lose herself. Because if there was one thing Amara Brooks had learned after everything, silence wasn't weakness. It was discipline. It was control. It was a storm waiting for a reason to rise. The days that followed Amara's arrival passed like a quiet storm. No thunder, no rain, just the stillness before something breaks. She moved through the halls of Clearwater High like a ghost with a heartbeat, eyes always forward, face unreadable. Every step she took was deliberate, each pause calculated. She didn't eat with anyone, didn't speak unless directly asked, and never reacted. Not to the whispers, the glances, or the carefully staged laughter that seemed to follow her like a shadow. But that silence, it wasn't passive. It unsettled people, especially Claire Hastings, who watched it all from her throne at the center of the school's social hierarchy. Her eyes sharp, her smile tighter than usual. Claire had seen new girls come and go. Some had tried to fight for space, some had tried to please her, and some had crumbled after a few well-placed words. But Amara, she did none of that. She simply existed, without asking permission. And to someone like Claire, who thrived on being the sun around which everyone else revolved, Amara's quiet refusal to orbit was the ultimate offense. "She thinks she's better than us," Madison said during lunch, twirling her hair with practiced grace, as she bit into a strawberry. "She hasn't even posted a single picture on Insta." "Total weirdo," Lexi added, pouting like it was a crime. "She's hiding something," Lily whispered, eyes narrowed. Claire sipped her iced latte slowly, her eyes fixed on the corner of the cafeteria, on the solitary girl sitting alone at a far table, slowly eating plain pasta, not even looking up. "She's hiding too well," Claire said. "Let's help her come out of her shell." Her voice was soft, but it carried intent like a knife hidden under silk. It started small. At first the whispers placed perfectly within Amara's earshot. "You know she got kicked out of her last school, right? I heard she punched a teacher. Maybe she's mute, or just slow." Amara heard every word, but her expression never shifted. She just kept walking, eyes forward, face still. But inside it was like each comment was a small match tossed into a dry forest. They didn't burn her yet, but they stacked, dried, waited. Her fingers twitched, her jaw tightened just slightly. When no one could see, she would go home, throw her backpack on the floor, and drop onto the carpet in her room. Some nights, she didn't even change out of her hoodie. She'd sit in the dark, and close her eyes, letting the silence fall over her like a blanket too heavy to breathe under. One night, her mom knocked gently on her door. "You okay in there, baby?" Amara waited a second too long before answering. "Yeah, just tired." Her mom didn't push. She never did. She trusted Amara's space the way she had taught her daughter to trust her own strength. But Amara was tired, tired of always being the one who had to stay calm. By the end of the week the teasing was no longer subtle. In chemistry, Claire and her circle deliberately switched seats so they could surround Amara. They spoke in fake whispers, loud enough for the whole class to hear. "She smells like smoke, probably from Atlanta. Don't they all carry knives? I heard she used to be in a gang. The teacher ignored it, or maybe he just didn't want to get involved. Amara sat still, not because she didn't care, not because it didn't sting, but because the monster inside her, the part of her that had broken a girl's rib with a single hit 2 years ago, was starting to stir. She felt it in her bones, the tension in her spine, the breath that paused in her lungs when she imagined grabbing Claire by the collar. And no, she couldn't, she wouldn't, not again. But that didn't mean she was weak. It meant she was terrified, not of Claire, not of the stairs, but of herself, of who she might become if she let go. That weekend, Amara sat at the dojo with her mom, wiping sweat from her brow after hours of solo drills. "You've been pushing harder than usual," her mom said, handing her a water bottle. Amara didn't respond right away. She just looked down at the scuffs on her knuckle. "People can't stand what they can't understand," her mom said gently, "especially power that doesn't beg to be seen." Amara swallowed. "I'm not trying to be powerful. I just want peace." Her mom smiled, sad, knowing, sometimes love, just existing in peace is power, and that scares people like Claire. Monday morning, Amara stepped into the hallway, calm on the outside, but inside, the matches were starting to smoke. Claire waited at the lockers, her girls at her side. She stepped forward, smiling like a cat who had already chosen her prey. "You always this quiet, Amara," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. Amara didn't respond. Claire leaned in closer. "Or are you just scared someone might actually see you?" For the first time, Amara looked her dead in the eyes, and smiled, not out of kindness, not out of fear, but because now she knew Claire didn't want to hurt her. She wanted to control her, and Amara Brooks, she had never belonged to anyone. The sun shone brightly over Clearwater High, but inside its halls, the air had grown colder, not in temperature, but in intention. It started subtly. Books knocked from Amara's hands by accident, her locker mysteriously jammed every morning, her name scribbled in black ink on the back of a bathroom stall under the words, "Creepy Atlanta Psycho." At first Amara kept telling herself it was fine. She could ignore it, endure it, breathe through it. Her mother's voice echoed in her head like a mantra. "Control is your strength, calm is your weapon." But each time her name was whispered with venom. Each time laughter followed her down the halls like a pack of wolves. Something inside her started to fray. Not tear, just fray. Quietly, silently, invisibly. In gym class they made it worse. The first blow was metaphorical. A game of dodgeball turned into target practice. Claire made sure the teams were coincidentally divided so that Amara was alone on one side, while Claire, Brad and Lexi stood on the other. "Let's see if Atlanta teaches them to dodge bullets." Claire sneered loud enough for everyone to hear. The first ball hit her in the stomach. The second slammed into her shoulder. The third, thrown by Brad, nailed her cheekbone, making her head whip back. The class roared with laughter. Even the coach chuckled before shouting half-heartedly, "Hey, watch the face." Amara didn't fall. She didn't cry. She just stood there, back straight, arms limp at her sides, eyes locked onto Claire's with a look so still, so cold, it silenced even Madison's giggles for a second. She never threw the ball back, and that made them hate her even more. Lunchtime was worse. She sat alone, as always, her plastic tray filled with untouched food. Students stared, pretending not to. Claire and her girls strutted past like clockwork, offering their daily dose of humiliation. Still no friends. Maybe she's just a statue. They dragged her from a museum. "Come on, say something, anything." Woof, meow, laughter, always laughter. That day, someone poured a bottle of chocolate milk across her sandwich, and all Amara did was look at it, then push the tray aside. She didn't even flinch, but inside, her throat was tight, her lungs screamed for air. That night, she broke, not loudly. She waited until her mom had gone to bed. Then she slipped into the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the cold tile floor, knees to her chest. No tears came,
Just silence. Just the sound of her own heartbeat pounding in her ears, like fists against a locked door. She stared at herself in the mirror. Her reflection didn't look like her. It looked like a girl trying desperately to stay small, trying not to be seen, trying not to erupt. She pressed her palm against the mirror. "I don't want to become that girl again," she whispered. "I don't want to hurt anyone." But part of her, the part buried under layers of control, was beginning to whisper back, "And what if they deserve it?" Tuesday morning brought something different, not kindness, but a small crack in the darkness. Amara opened her locker and found a folded note tucked between her books. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't cruel. It was simple. "I saw what they did. You didn't deserve it. Nee." She looked around, heart suddenly thudding. Who was N? Nobody had ever spoken to her with anything but sarcasm or suspicion. She stuffed the note in her pocket and didn't say a word. But for the first time in weeks, her hand didn't tremble when she closed the locker. That afternoon, Claire took it too far. In the middle of English class, while the teacher was distracted, she loudly whispered, "Hey Amara, how's life in the jungle? Heard Atlanta's full of rats and roaches. You must feel right at home." The class laughed, loudly, shamelessly. Even the teacher glanced up, but didn't say a word. Amara didn't speak. She didn't blink. She just stood up. The entire room froze. She walked out without a word, straight out of the class, straight down the hall, straight to the girls' bathroom, where she locked the door, and finally let her fists curl. She punched the side of the stall wall, not hard enough to break it, just enough to feel the pain shoot through her knuckle, to remind herself that she still felt something, that she was still human. And then she breathed, in, out, in again, her voice in her head again, her mom's, her trainer's, her own. "Control isn't weakness. Power isn't rage. You don't start the fight, Amara." But even she knew it was coming, and when it did, she wouldn't walk away again. She should have walked away. She knew that. Every bone in her body told her to keep walking, to take the insult like a scratch on armor, to keep her breath calm and her fists unclenched. But that day, in gym class, something cracked. Coach Daniels barked orders in his usual half-bored voice. "All right, teams of 3, pick your partners." Amara knew before the words even left his mouth that no one would pick her. She didn't even look around. She quietly walked to the far end of the gym, hoping foolishly that she could just do jumping jacks alone and disappear. But Claire wasn't about to let that happen. "Coach," Claire called out, feigning confusion, "Amara doesn't have a group. Maybe she could join us." Her voice was sugar dipped in venom. Coach Daniels barely looked up from his clipboard. "Fine, join Claire's group." Amara's jaw tightened. She didn't flinch, didn't speak. She just walked toward Claire, who was standing with Brad, the quarterback, and Madison, her right hand. Brad grinned like a lion staring at a gazelle. "You ready, ATL?" Amara said nothing. The assignment was simple. A relay race. 3 people per group, run back and forth passing a baton. But it became something else the second they started. Brad accidentally shoulder checked her on the first run. Claire tossed the baton at her feet instead of her hands. Madison tripped her lightly, but enough for her knee to slam the floor. Each time, Amara said nothing. Her silence wrapped tighter around her like armor. But then Brad did it again, this time harder. He didn't even try to make it subtle. His elbow slammed into her ribs as he passed by. She stumbled back, breath caught in her throat. The gym lights swam for a moment. Something deep in her chest, something she had buried under layers of silence and discipline, and years of breathe. Amara started to shift, and then Claire laughed. Not a giggle, not a whisper, a sharp victorious laugh. "Oops," she smirked. "Guess Atlanta girls don't have balance either." That was it. That was the moment. Something rose inside her like a scream she hadn't let out in years. It wasn't rage. It was release. A burning tremor in her hands, a familiar tingling in her legs. Her father used to call it the itch. She hadn't felt it since that day in Atlanta, since she'd let her instincts take over and left a girl with 3 broken ribs and a concussion. She had sworn she'd never let that part of her out again, but it was clawing its way up her spine. She turned, walked straight off the gym floor, not running, not crying, just walking. She didn't even hear Coach yelling after her. She didn't care. She pushed open the locker room door and leaned hard against the wall. Her breath was ragged, her chest tight. She raised her fists and stared at them like they belonged to someone else. These hands had hurt people. These hands had made her a threat. These hands had made her a ghost, moving from school to school, with a shadow she couldn't escape. She clenched her fingers into tight, trembling fists. I don't want to hurt anyone, she whispered to herself. But what if they won't stop? That night, her silence broke. It was late, past midnight, when she crept into the kitchen. The house was dark except for the faint blue light from the fridge. As she opened it, searching for anything cold to soothe her still throbbing ribs, her mother's voice drifted from behind her. You're hurt. Amara didn't turn. It's fine. It's not fine, her mom said gently. I know the look in your eyes when it's not fine. Amara closed the fridge. The light blinked out. I almost hit him today, she said, voice shaking. I wanted to. I didn't care who saw. Her mother didn't speak. She just waited. I can't do this again, Mom. If I lose it, if I hurt someone again, they'll throw me out. They'll label me all over again. Her voice cracked. They'll say I'm dangerous. Her mom walked over and sat beside her at the small kitchen table. You're not dangerous, Amara, she said quietly. You're powerful. There's a difference. Amara stared at her fists again. It doesn't feel different. Her mom reached over, took one of her hands, and placed it palm up on the table. You know what scares people the most? She asked. Amara didn't answer. Her mother traced a line across her daughter's knuckles. Power that doesn't flinch. Power that doesn't need to explode to be felt. She looked up, her voice soft but unwavering. You've already won every time you didn't react. But you don't have to keep swallowing fire, baby. There's a time to stand up. Amara nodded slowly, her eyes brimming. Her mom smiled faintly. Just make sure when you do, it's not for revenge, it's for clarity. The next day, the whispers were louder than ever. Brad laughed in the hallway and mimicked her walk. Claire faked a stumble and called out, Careful, Amara's aura might knock us down. Students laughed, but something had changed. Amara didn't just endure it anymore. She watched, she studied. She wasn't silent because she was afraid now. She was silent because she was choosing. And then she found it. A small note tucked into the edge of her locker door again. Same handwriting as before. Clean, careful. You don't have to fight alone. I see you. No. This time Amara smiled, just a little. Because now she wasn't just holding herself back. She was getting ready. And when the time came, she wouldn't run, she wouldn't explode, she would finish it. The morning sky over Clearwater High was gray, thick with clouds that hadn't yet decided whether they'd rain, or just hang there, heavy and unmoving. The hallways felt the same, like something was suspended in the air, something about to fall. Amara noticed it the moment she stepped inside. She felt it in the hush that swept across the crowd as she passed, in the eyes that lingered too long, in the way conversations died mid-sentence whenever she came near. But what really caught her attention was the piece of paper taped to her locker. Her breath stilled, not out of fear, but familiarity. She had seen this before. The way bullies declare war with theatrics. She pulled the paper free, careful not to rip it. The handwriting was sharp and feminine, a single sentence written in red ink. After school, behind the gym, be there, or stay a coward. Claire, no threats, no insults, just a challenge wrapped in arrogance. Amara folded the note neatly and slid it into her jacket pocket. She didn't react, not on her face, not in her body, but inside. Something settled. She wasn't surprised. Claire had been building toward this moment. From the day Amara walked through the doors of Clearwater High, the whispers hadn't broken her. The cafeteria humiliation hadn't either. The shoulder checks, the milk spills, the rumors, the fake laughs, the dodgeballs to the ribs, none of it worked. Because Amara never gave Claire the one thing she needed, a reaction. No, this challenge was Claire's last attempt. Her Hail Mary, her final performance to reclaim the power she felt slipping from her manicured fingers. The hallway crowd parted like the sea, as Claire strutted down the center, flanked by Madison and Brad like royal guards. Her chin was high, her lips curled in confidence, but her eyes searched for Amara, and when she found her, standing calmly at her locker, slipping a book into her backpack, as if nothing had happened, Claire stopped, dead in her tracks. "Hope you read my little note," she said loudly, making sure everyone around could hear. Amara turned her head slightly. Her eyes met Claire's, not with hate, not with fear, not with emotion at all, just stillness. It unnerved Claire. "You gonna show up?" Claire continued, forcing a casual laugh. "Or are you just gonna pretend you're too deep and mysterious to show emotion like all?" A few students snickered, unsure of what side to pick. Amara's lips parted for the first time in days. Her voice was low, steady, sharp as a blade she didn't need to draw. "I'll be there." That was all she said, but it was enough. Enough to send a chill through the hallway. Enough to silence even Madison, whose smile faltered for the first time. Claire blinked. She hadn't expected that. The rest of the day moved like a slow countdown. Everywhere Amara walked, she could feel the buzz around her, like the air before lightning, like the way people circle around a fire, pretending they're not afraid it might spread. In class, teachers spoke, but she didn't hear them. Her mind was elsewhere, but not racing. It was focused, grounded. At lunch she sat in her usual corner, alone, not because she was excluded now, but because she chose to be. People didn't laugh at her tray anymore. They didn't stare quite the same. Some even nodded, a quiet kind of respect. One girl, tall, with freckles and nervous hands, left a juice box near her tray without a word, then hurried away. Amara watched her go. She didn't drink it, but she smiled. At 3:15, the final bell rang. Backpacks slung over shoulder, lockers slammed. Students poured into the halls with hushed voices and darting eyes. By 3:25, the crowd had formed behind the gym. Not a mob, not loud, just students, curious, expectant, unsure of what they were about to witness.
And then Claire arrived, wearing all black, a leather jacket, her hair tied back, lip gloss perfect, like she was heading into a movie scene rather than a confrontation. She stood at the center, Madison on one side, Brad on the other. She was ready for the cameras that weren't there. She was ready to win something, even if she didn't know what. Amara arrived at 3:29. No fanfare, just quiet steps across the concrete. Her black hoodie zipped up, her fists buried deep in her pockets. She walked with a kind of stillness that made the crowd shuffle back, even Claire tense, because Amara didn't look scared. She looked ready. They faced each other in the middle of the circle. Claire broke the silence. "I knew you'd show up," she said, her voice cracking with performative confidence. "Thought you'd want to see what happens when a fake tough girl finally gets exposed." Amara didn't reply. Claire stepped closer. "You think just because you've been quiet and weird that people are afraid of you? You're just a scared girl who got lucky." "I'm not scared," Amara interrupted, quietly. Claire blinked. Her mouth hung open, mid-sentence. Amara took one step forward. "But you are." That simple sentence, delivered in a tone as calm as wind through trees, shattered something. Claire opened her mouth, but no words came out. The crowd stared, wide-eyed, because Amara had already won, not by throwing a punch, but by breaking the one thing Claire had always relied on: control. And as the clock struck 3:30, Amara took a deep breath, her eyes never leaving Claire's. This wasn't about revenge. This wasn't about proving anything. This was about ending it, not just for herself, but for every silent kid who had ever been made to feel small. And this time, she wouldn't walk away. The circle was tight now. 50, maybe 60 students stood shoulder to shoulder behind the gym, breath held, backs pressed to the brick wall, or leaning against bikes and benches, waiting. Some held their phones, screens glowing in anticipation. Others just stared, wide-eyed, unable to blink. And at the center, Claire Hastings, Amara Brooks, the queen, and the storm she never saw coming. Claire stepped forward, fake confidence spilling out of her like too much perfume. "So this is it," she said, circling slowly. "You really came to fight." Amara didn't move. Her arms stayed loose at her sides, her breath calm, her eyes fixed on Claire like she was reading her, not fearing her. "I didn't come to fight," Amara said quietly. "I came to end it." Claire laughed too loudly, too nervously. Oh, how poetic. She leaned closer, voice dropping to a sharp whisper. "Then let's end it, hero." Before anyone could speak, Brad stepped forward, trying to be the enforcer Claire needed him to be. "Want me to handle her?" he asked. Claire smirked. "Be my guest." Brad rolled his shoulders, cracking his knuckles, like he'd practiced this moment in front of a mirror. He moved fast, lunging toward Amara, aiming to shove her down like he'd done in gym class. But this time, Amara moved faster. She sidestepped with effortless grace, grabbed his wrist mid-swing, and pivoted, using his momentum against him. Brad's feet left the ground for a moment, then slammed back into the dirt, face first. A collective gasp shot through the crowd. Phones lifted, mouths fell open. Brad groaned, dazed, his cheek scraped raw by gravel. Amara didn't even look at him. She was already facing the next threat. Madison rushed in next, screaming not words, just frustration. She raised her hand as if to slap Amara, but Amara caught her wrist midair, held it firm, eyes locked on hers. "Don't do what she tells you to," Amara said. "It'll cost you more than you know." Madison's arm trembled, her breath shook. Then slowly, Amara released her. Madison stumbled back, wide-eyed and stunned. This wasn't a girl in a rage. This wasn't some violent transfer student from Atlanta. This was a fighter who wasn't fighting, and that made her terrifying. Now it was just Claire. She hesitated, the crowd silent around her. Her kingdom was watching. She couldn't back down. Not now, not after everything. So she screamed, not out of strength, but fear, and lunged, arms flailing, nails out, pure panic, dressed in rage. But Amara was ready. She caught Claire's wrist with one hand, stepped into her body, and with the other, gently but firmly pulled her down by the elbow, not hurting her, just guiding her to her knees. A move her mother had taught her. Control the limb, control the mind. Claire's body froze, trembling in a crouch, eyes darting. Samara leaned close enough that only Claire could hear her. "You never had power. You had fear, and I don't fear you." Claire's eyes widened. The weight of those words, sharp, clean, unflinching, hit harder than any punch could have. Her breath hitched, her lips trembled. Amara released her arm and stepped back. Claire fell to the dirt with a soft, stunned thud. Silence, real heavy silence. Then whispers. She didn't even hit her. She took down Brad like it was nothing. She won without violence. Claire sat there, panting, cheeks streaked with sweat and something dangerously close to tears. Madison didn't come to help her. Brad didn't stand up for her. Even the crowd, once her audience, now stared at her like something unfamiliar, like they had just seen her without her crown. Claire looked up at Amara, searching for something, a reason, a way to salvage it, but all she found was calm. "I warned you," Amara said softly. "You brought this on yourself." And then without a single word more, Amara turned and walked away. No cheers followed her, no claps, just silence. But it was the loudest silence she'd ever heard, because it was respectful, it was reverent, it was the silence people give when they witness something they know they'll never forget. As she walked across the field, the gray clouds above finally broke, not into rain, but light. A beam of sun cut through the sky, and warmed her face, and for the first time since she'd arrived at Clearwater High, she felt warm too, not just on her skin, but inside. In that moment, Amara understood.
She hadn't won a fight. She had ended a war, one built on fear, fueled by cruelty, and enforced by silence. And now, that silence belonged to her. The next morning, Clearwater High didn't feel the same. The walls still looked the same. The lockers were still lined in neat blue rows, and the bell still rang with its usual monotone chime. But something underneath all of it had shifted. The whispers weren't about Amara anymore. They were about Claire. She didn't even fight back. Brad hit the ground like a sack of bricks. Claire just fell apart. And Amara was no longer the new girl. She was a presence now, not loud, not showy, but undeniable. Claire sat alone in the cafeteria that morning. Her table, the one at the center of everything, was empty. No Madison, no Brad, no entourage, just her, staring into a paper cup of untouched coffee. It was a kind of silence Claire had never experienced before. Not the comfortable kind, not the powerful kind. This silence was cold, a mirror she couldn't look away from. Every now and then, someone would glance at her, not with fear, but with something far worse, pity. Across the room, Amara sat at her usual table, still alone, still quiet, but the space around her felt different now. People didn't laugh when she passed. They nodded. Some smiled nervously, unsure if they should speak, and she nodded back, gently, politely, but didn't invite them in. Not yet, because respect wasn't the same as connection. Amara still wasn't sure who she could trust. In the hallway between classes, Claire walked with her arms folded, her shoulders tense like she was trying to shrink herself, a queen with no kingdom left to carry. She passed groups who used to part for her. Now they barely looked up. She saw Madison standing with a new group, laughing, whispering. When Claire approached, Madison turned and looked away, just like that, as if they'd never sat beside each other for years, as if her loyalty was as shallow as Claire's power had been. And it stung. God, it stung, because Claire finally realized the truth. She had built everything on fear. Her whole empire, her social rule, every laugh she'd ever stolen from someone else's embarrassment, it had all been borrowed power. And once fear was gone, so was everything else. She didn't cry, not at school, not where they could see. But when she got home that day, she locked her bedroom door, collapsed onto the edge of her bed, and let the tears fall, not because she had lost, but because maybe for the first time in her life, she had been seen, not as Claire the perfect, not as Claire the cruel, but Claire the insecure girl who had spent years performing strength while hiding all her fear under lip gloss and sarcasm. Meanwhile, Amara sat at her desk that night, the note from N still folded neatly in her journal. She had never figured out who wrote it. Maybe she didn't need to. What mattered more was what she had done with the strength it gave her. Her hands rested on the journal, like they were finally at peace, no longer shaking, no longer afraid of their own power. You didn't start the fight, her mother had said, but you had to be the one to end it. And she had, but it hadn't made her feel triumphant. It made her feel tired, tired of fighting, tired of being seen only when she was resisting something, tired of always needing to be strong just to exist. The next morning, something unexpected happened. As Amara walked into the cafeteria, tray in hand, a few eyes met hers. One student nodded, another offered a soft hey. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was real. And then she saw her, Claire, sitting at the back table now, alone. Her eyes were hollow, her expression blank, her tray untouched. And Amara paused. She didn't feel rage. She didn't feel vengeance. She felt understanding, because she had sat in that same silence before, because she knew what it felt like to be isolated, to be feared, to be watched like a glass about to crack. And so quietly, steadily, Amara walked toward her. The entire room fell into stunned silence again, just like it had behind the gym. Every eye turned. Claire looked up. Shock rippled across her face, then confusion, then fear. Amara set her tray down across from her, She didn't sit. She just looked her in the eye and said, gently, "It's over." Claire's eyes shimmered. She didn't respond. Not with words, just a slight broken nod. A girl with no fight left. A girl who for the first time understood the cost of the power she had abused. Amara turned, picked up her tray, and walked away, her steps light, not because she had won, but because she had chosen not to destroy. Some students whispered, others said nothing at all, but one truth settled quietly into the hearts of everyone who watched. Amara Brooks wasn't a threat. She was a reckoning, the kind that doesn't burn everything down, just everything false. And from those ashes, people saw her clearly now, not as a mystery, not as a danger, but as someone who had never wanted to fight, but had never been afraid to finish one. The last week of school passed like a slow sunrise after a long storm. Everything looked the same. Same lockers, same bells, same squeaky wheels on lunch carts, but everything felt different. The halls were quieter, not with fear, with awareness. The energy that once orbited around Claire had scattered. Her name was still spoken, but now in past tense, like a chapter that had been read and closed. And Amara, she walked the halls not with power, but with presence. People still stared, but they didn't whisper, they didn't laugh, they didn't challenge. They watched because something about her made them want to listen, even in silence. She never asked for attention. She never posted about what happened. She didn't strut, didn't gloat, didn't reclaim a throne, because she had never wanted one. But still, every step she took now seemed to leave behind an invisible echo. This is what strength really looks like. Claire hadn't spoken to anyone. Since that day behind the gym, she walked differently, shoulders down, headphones in, eyes fixed ahead, like she couldn't afford to meet anyone's gaze. No more high heels, no more group photos in the hallway, no more giggling with Madison about someone else's outfit. She had become something she never thought possible in Clearwater High. Forgettable, and yet, something about it felt freeing. She didn't have to perform anymore, didn't have to keep her chin up just to make someone else feel small. It hurt. God, it hurt. But maybe that hurt was her way back to something real. One day, Claire sat in the cafeteria, alone as usual. Her tray was untouched, her appetite lost somewhere in the silence of who she used to be. Then she saw her, Amara, walking toward her again. Claire sat up, tense, unsure if she should prepare an apology or brace for another quiet confrontation. But Amara said nothing at first. She just stood there, calm, tall, composed. "Then can I sit?" Claire blinked. "Why?" It came out harsher than she meant it to. Amara shrugged softly. "Because you look like someone who hasn't been asked anything real in a while." Claire lowered her gaze. She didn't respond. Amara sat down, across from her. No phones, no crowd, no agenda, just two girls in the wreckage of a war. Neither of them had truly understood until it ended. Claire's voice broke the silence first. "I don't know who I am without all that." She didn't look up. Amara said nothing, just listened. "I didn't hate you," Claire whispered. "I just didn't know what to do with someone who wasn't afraid of me." There it was, the most honest thing she'd ever said in school. "I didn't want to ruin you. I needed people to keep looking at me like I mattered." Her voice cracked on the last word. Amara finally spoke. "You always mattered. You just didn't know it wasn't supposed to come from fear." Claire's eyes welled. Not dramatic, movie tears. Just quiet grief for who she'd been. "You're not like I thought," Claire said. "You didn't break me. You didn't humiliate me." Amara leaned back in her chair, her voice soft but unshakable. "I didn't want to be like you." Claire flinched, but nodded. She understood, and that hurt more than anything Amara could have said. "Do you hate me?" Claire asked. Amara looked at her for a long time, not with anger, not with pity, with clarity. "No," she said. Then she stood up. "But I don't forgive you yet." Claire swallowed hard. "But maybe," Amara added. "I'll get there." And with that, she walked away, not out of vengeance, not to prove anything, but because that conversation wasn't the end of something. It was the start of something, something fragile, honest, real. Outside, the sun warmed the courtyard, where once only shadows followed her. Students nodded now, not with awe, but with something deeper, respect, and maybe a bit of gratitude, because in her own way, Amara had fought for all of them, even the ones who never dared speak. Weeks passed, graduation came, and when Amara's name was called, the applause wasn't explosive, it wasn't over the top, but it was real. Her mother stood in the crowd, hands clutched over her chest, eyes shining with quiet pride. When Amara stepped down from the stage, she didn't smile wide, she didn't wave. She just looked at the sea of students, many of whom had once ignored her, mocked her, doubted her, and nodded, because this wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming her right to exist in peace, without apology. On her last day at Clearwater, she left something inside her locker, a note, no name, just a message. Power built on fear dies in silence. Power rooted in dignity never has to speak. No one knew who would find it, but maybe that didn't matter, because the people who needed to hear it already had.